Okay, yeah. So we'll go ahead and get started today. We're going to be doing a demo kind of for the navigation and animations that we were going over on Monday for lecture. So kind of this is going to be structured a little differently. The first part is going to be like a walkthrough of setting up navigation. And so again, navigation is just like how you switch between different screens in your app and like it's a lot of syntax, so that's why we're just like walking through it with you guys. The great thing is that you just have to set it up once for every app. So yeah, and then there will be a little bit of time to work on practicing animations, and then we'll do the walkthrough the last couple of minutes. So to kind of go over the demo and what I'm going to be doing for the navigation. So basically how I have this set up is that we have three different screens. And so we're going to be like, for this first screen, you can like enter your name, press the OK button. The OK button will take you to the next screen. And that's where like it'll display the name that you entered before. And then pressing OK again will take you to the third screen. And we also have this bottom navigation bar that we'll kind of go over, which will just like, you can, like you all know how it works. It'll just take you to the screen that you push on. So yeah. And then you don't have to worry about like following along with this code because it's all like the navigation stuff is all set up for you in the starter code that you can download from the demo page. So I'll just be going through how that works. So, and then there's like this section of the textbook, very handy. It'll show you, it like walks through how exactly you need to set up or like all the steps you need. And I'll just be walking through this and kind of explaining it as we go along. So the first step will be to set up dependencies for navigation. So in order to do navigation in Android, we use like something called a nav host and a nav controller. And they're kind of like they'll handle all the like actual like navigating between screens and like working with routines and things like that. So as is like the pattern with Android development, we're going to be like importing a lot of things. And this time it's going to be like dependencies specifically. So these are just like, we're just pretty much updating. You could think of it as like the settings of your project so that we can work with it or like with these specific like um, things that we'll be using. So first we'll be adding a couple lines of code to this libversions file. And a couple more to the build.gradle. And like the textbook tells you all the specific files that you need to like put these lines in. Oh, okay. And then we can, every time you add things to like your Gradle files, you need to like resync the project. That'll kind of just load all these dependencies into your project. Yeah, so now that's done. We're going to create the screen sealed class. And this is like kind of a map of all the screens that we can kind of access or navigate in. Um, okay, and then that'll just be like another file um, within your main like file directory. And then we'll call that screen.kt. It'll be a sealed class. Okay. And so for this kind of thing, it's not a UI element, so we don't need like a composable annotation, but we will be using like a serializable annotation. And it's not really important that you necessarily understand what this does. It's more for like the Jetpack Compose for it to kind of understand that this is like these are things that can be passed around the project and like that it can like be turned into strings and things. So not that important for you guys to know. Oh. But then like we want to be defining like every screen that we'll be using. So in this case, we have three screens: entry screen, mood screen, and welcome screen. So we'll go ahead and define those. These will also all need the serializable annotation. Entry screen. And so we'll notice that the welcome screen is going to use a slightly different kind of syntax. We'll need a data class instead. And this is because the welcome screen is going to be taking in like the name that you've passed from the entry screen. So it's going to have to take an argument. And because of that, we're going to use a data class. And so for that welcome screen, and we'll define that it needs some val name of type string. Screen. Yeah. And so now that we have this set up, we can go ahead and set up the nav host. And this is like, it's kind of like the manager of all the navigation. And you want to put that in like the main activity just because like all your screens are going to be using this. So we want to have it in a location that's like easily accessible to be like pass around. Because this is a smaller project, it's okay to like put it in the main activity. But like once you get to bigger code bases, it's usually like placed in like its own separate file just for readability. Um, yeah. So we'll go ahead and get rid of the starter code. And you'll notice this is maybe a little different from how you've been doing it before in terms of like setting up your main activity. Um, Sometimes like you'll delete the scaffolding part as well, but we're going to be using this later for the bottom navigation bar. So I'll go ahead and like explain that part a little later, but we'll need these values. So within that, we can define our nav host. And so the nav host takes a couple arguments. It's going to be a nav controller. So we can go ahead and define that as well. And this is just syntax. It'll just like initiate that for you. So nav controller, the argument, and we set that equal to the nav controller that we defined. And then it'll also need a start, it's the start screen. So that'll just tell you or tell the nav controller which screen that we want to kind of open up on. Start destination. And so we've just defined a couple screens in our screen file. And so we want to start on the entry screen. So that'll just be calling like a regular class screen.entry screen. Yeah. And so you can think of this kind of like a TV almost in the sense that like your nav controller is like the remote that you'll use to like switch between various like channels or screens. And you could say like the nav host is like the menu of the TV, so it'll like show you all the channels. So in that sense, we're going to define like all the screens that we can switch between. And if you notice, like when we were writing the screen like class, there's no like UI associated with it. We kind of just like wrote names and like said that these exist. So this is like where we're going to be doing the like associating the actual UI with these screens. And that syntax will be composable. Screen, entry screen. And here we'll put the actual call to the UI. So that'll be like this composable here entry screen. And we'll do this like with all the other ones as well. For now, our welcome screen does take a name argument. For now, we can just like hard code that and we'll come back to that later. disposable. And the last one is going to be the mood screen. Okay, so now that we have that nav host set up, we can go ahead and start like implementing the actual like navigation part. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Yes.
Here that says invalid VCS route mapping, and I don't know.
Oh, is that the starter code?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Um, we can come back to that in a bit, or like I guess Justin, if you want to. But like you don't need it right now. Yeah. So like all the navigation stuff is included in that already.
Well, yeah, I think if you just close out, like hit OK, because it's like an error that pops up like on the Android Studio. The only option here is configure, or I could just click X. Yeah, you should be able to click out of it. I think it's just like Git stuff, but if you just downloaded the Git or like the code from the handout, it should be fine. Just close that, it should be fine.
Cool. Okay, so in terms of navigating, like you can do it, it's like a function in a sense, like you can anywhere that you might use a function, you can like kind of navigate to a different screen. So in this demo, we're using like buttons to switch between screens like within the actual screen itself. Um, so if we look at the entry screen UI, um, we have like your typical like all these elements, and then we have this button. And we want this button to like pass or like navigate to the next screen, right? So in order to do that, we're gonna pass a nav, like we're gonna have to call that within the main activity and then kind of pass that into the entry screen. So in order to do that, we're gonna like kind of define a new argument for the entry screen, and we can call that like to welcome screen. And this is just gonna be like the function that navigates. Yeah, and then so since we are passing an argument as well, we're gonna have to, this function is going to take a string. And then within the onClick, we can call that to welcome screen. And we're gonna take the var name that we defined here. Yeah. And so to actually define the functionality of this, we'll do that in the main activity, and we'll be like using it in the entry screen call. So we can say to welcome screen is equal to, and so to actually do the navigation within like I guess navigation in general, you'll be using navcontrol.navigate. It's just a function of the nav controller. And it'll take in like the screen that you want to navigate to. And that'll be the welcome screen. And then the welcome screen, again, it needs some kind of, it needs this argument of name. So we can just go ahead and I'm gonna double check that. Yeah, okay. So this is like the implicit kind of passing in an argument again. So we'll be passing in the name that kind of just comes along with the from the to welcome screen. And we can just call that in the welcome screen itself. Um, yeah. And if we try running this, Okay, yeah. So again, since we set the start destination to our entry screen, this is the first UI that's going to pop up. We can say like, my name is Amy, press OK. And oh, this is because we hard coded the name somewhere in here. Yeah, we hard coded it here. Okay. Yeah, so this one's going to be a little bit different as well. So since we need to get this argument from the function or the navigation call that we made from the entry screen. There's going to be a bit of a different syntax here in order to get this name. So again, similarly, the nav backstack entry, again, it's kind of like an arbitrary name that we're giving this. You can think about it as like when you're like surfing the web, I guess you click on multiple links and you can click the back button and the back button will take you back to different like your previous screens. And that works because it's kind of keeping track of like every screen that you've visited. Um, So in the same sense, in order to get the name, we just want to go back to the function or the screen that we came from to kind of get that argument that was passed along with this navigate function. So we can say the val name is equal to the nav backstack entry dot argument. Again, this is just syntax. So I have to double check. Throughout screen. Yeah, so you'll just use this line of code, access the um like your call from before, and then you want the name argument that you passed. And then we can pass in this name here, and that should correctly update. In terms of moving on to like the mood screen, it's like a similar process. Within the welcome screen, you're going to want to define along with this to mood screen function. And since there's no argument passed in here, this will be of type like empty argument to unit. And on the button click, we're going to use a to mood screen. And yeah. Okay, if we test this here, that like updates correctly. Okay. And so to finish this up, we just need to pass in this to mood screen that we just updated this welcome screen UI to require this navigation function. And we can call that mood screen. We're just defining it here again. And that'll be the nav controller again, and then navigate to our screen dot screen. And that'll take you to the mood screen, which the UI isn't built out yet in this version. Yeah, and so the next thing we're going to do is building out the bottom navigation bar. And again, that's just like this bottom thing here. It'll like take you to the screen that you want to go to based on the buttons. So again, to start, there's a couple things that you need to, a little bit of setup to do. So you want to define a data class nav item. And this is just going to define, it's kind of like every single little button on the nav bar is going to use this like type, or it's going to use this information. So nav item. And then screen. Screen is going to be where you want to navigate to. Label is the little like label underneath the icon, and icon self-explanatory. And we haven't worked with icons yet in this class. Again, it's just like a syntax thing. So you don't need to worry too much about the exact syntax for that. Then we import this. Okay, and val tabs this is going to be a list of what you want to display in the bottom nav bar. So we want to say, so in this case, again, we're displaying two things. Like the home is going to be the entry screen, the emotions is going to be like the mood screen. So we can say screen entry screen label is home and icon. Uh, so icons is just like a icon library within, I guess, Kotlin. We can just choose, and then like this can be like an arbitrary icon. Yeah. And we do the same thing for our next like navbar item, which is going to be the emotion screen, or so mood screen. We call it mood, and then we can say like the account circle. Okay. And then to actually add this, again, we come back to the scaffold that I mentioned before. So the scaffold is just like a layout composable that'll allow you to like it'll like handle things where you have your main UI, and then if you want to put like a bottom nav bar or top nav bar or like some floating button, it'll just make sure that like these UI things aren't like conflicting with each other. Um, so within this, it's like the bottom bar is going to be an argument within the scaffold. So bar, um, and so then what we're doing here is that for every tab or every kind of icon in the list of tabs that we defined here, we want to create a navigation bar item for that. And that is what all of this code is doing. And we can go ahead and just copy. Oh, that's fine. Again, like import issues per usual. Okay, so we're missing the navigation bar. Okay, and then we can do the tabs.map. Or not. Okay. No, tab dot. Okay. Now we can continue. And we're just mapping all of these to a navigation bar item. And so basically the navigation bar item, as we can see here, like it has like all these arguments, and we're going to use, so like the item is going to be one of these like nav items that we've defined in tab. And we're just using these properties to kind of switch between the screens. So like here we're navigating to the items screen that we defined. And yeah. And then we're just setting the labels according to as we defined them before. A couple imports. Yeah, and that should be good. So if we run it now, hopefully we'll see a bottom navigation bar there. Yeah, so it shows up. You have buttons, you can switch between different screens. Again, you can still like go between all of that. And that's like your navigation setup, I guess. So does anyone have any questions about this part? Okay, amazing. So we can move on then to like the actual demo part of, or like what you guys will be working on for this like demo. And that's going to be like the actual like animations in the mood screen. So in the demo starter code, we have like the mood screen is built out and you have like emojis and like buttons. So when you click on a button, the background will change accordingly and the emoji will also change. So if you notice right now, if you want to like open the code, run it, and take a look, that the background color and the emojis like switch very abruptly when you like click on various buttons. So your goal is to like use animations to make these like changes occur smoothly. So like the background color should kind of fade out and then the emoji will like slide in and out across the screen. Yeah. And so our tips for you are going to be like the animations in Compose documentation. So if you just Google like Jetpack Compose animations, that site has a lot of good examples for like setting up animations within your code and also like use the hints that we've given you in the demo. So yeah, you have like 10 to 15 minutes to work on that, and then we'll come back together and like demo that in the end.
Oh, I see, I see. How you meant to do like actually, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can go ahead and like walk through the animation portion of this demo now. So to kind of go through the code really quick for the starter code at least, we're looking at the mood screen and we're representing our mood. There's like a list that we have down here, and we're representing it by like this mutable state that we're keeping track of, or the moods list is up here, and we're representing it with the current mood mutable state. So we have these two functions as well that return the emoji according to the mood and the string or like the color um, of the background according to the mood. So right now, if we look at background color, it's like a very quick change. So in order to like animate this, since background color, or at least like the hex code version of colors is like a continuous kind of scale, we can use the animate color as state, or like in general, like this as state animation type. So to do that, we can go ahead and this one out. This will be val background color by animate color state. And this is going to take in two arguments, which are the target value, and that's going to be our get mood color. So again, this is just returning the appropriate color depending on our current mood. And it's going to take an animation spec. And so this is kind of just like the timing, I guess, of your animation. So we use a tween for that. I guess you can think about this as like a kind of like a pause or like how long your animation takes. So we can call that a duration. It'll be duration. Let me import first. Millis, and we're gonna set that to 1000. Um, so we have a problem, and again, we're gonna want to call this a var, since we'll be like updating it later. Okay, and then we want to remove this redundant background color since this is like handling all of our updates now. So, okay, great. And so that should handle the background color. Does anyone have questions about that? Okay. And now you notice like the color kind of fades in. So for the like the emoji switching, um, again, this is like the animated content type of animation can kind of like handle a lot of wide variety of things. So in our case, we kind of want to put the entire text component that's like handling the emojis into the animated content. So we're like wrapping this entire thing in an animated content to do that animation. Content. So we wrap it by putting this text component within the body of the animated content. Okay, and some arguments it's going to take is the target state again, or kind of what we're animating. And that's going to be the current mood. And there's going to be a transition spec. And this is just like defining like what you want the transition to look like. And like there's a lot of different ways you can do this. There's a lot of different transition specs that you can pick. And like if you want to learn more about that, you can just go on like the documentation and take a look at that. But for this one specifically, we asked for a slide in. So we're going to do slide in horizontally. And then that's going to need to be combined with a together with to like handle the slide out portion. Slide in horizontally and slide out. Okay, and these are both going to take arguments as well. So the animation spec again just defines how long it'll take. Set between 300 and an initial offset. And this like just tells it like what the initial position you want it to be in. And that's like kind of staying static in the beginning. So full width and full width. So for the slide out, again, same animation spec. Oh, but this time we want to have it like slide off the screen. So for the offset, this time it's going to be target offset. We change it from full width to the negative full width. Okay, so if you like kind of think about that, you're just moving it from one side like to the negative side, which is like sliding left. And issues. Yeah. So here we're gonna have to like we want to pass the mood that we want to like display into the text composable. And yeah, we want to display the target state. Oh, oh, we want to display the mood. Okay, yeah. So basically we have the target state, it has the current mood. And when we animate, so like on the state change of the target state, we pass in that mood to the text composable and that updates that. So if we run it again, and while we wait on that, does anyone have questions about this portion of the animation? Yes.
When I type an initial offset X,
Mhm.
like it doesn't turn blue. It's still white.
The initial offset.
Initial offset and also the target offset. Like the one for slide
Yes.
horizontally, it's slide in horizontally, and
Okay.
slide out horizontally. This one isn't blue. I have to make sure that commas between your arms. Oh, my bad. Otherwise you won't know that they're separate. And then if you put equal. Yeah, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, so if we take a look now, you can see like if you watch the emoji, it kind of slides off to the left. And when it starts, it like stays static, right? So that's why we have the full width to full width. And yeah, that's like all we have for the demo today. Do we have any other questions? Okay, like if not, we hope you all have a great spring break. There is an assignment 3 is due the last Sunday of spring break. So yeah.
This with full width doing
So you're kind of just defining like the the initial position of this emoji. So like it's the initial offset, right? So like within the component, like the text component, that takes up a certain amount of space. And like we're basically saying where we want this to be positioned. So like when it's sliding off, we're saying like we're switching I guess like the position, we're like moving it off to the negative full width. Yeah, so it's kind of just like defining like where your text is like in its original component position. Does that like answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh shoot. Yeah. Here's an attendance form. Thank you all for coming. Oh.